Hi, Elliot. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. We're easing into this very
Mm-hmm.
serious conversation about your very serious movie.
Uh-huh.
I get a little giggly when I'm nervous, and definitely the topic makes me a little nervous.
Sure.
And I actually have been wanting to write about the film online, but it just feels like it's such a loaded topic, and you could totally misspeak or misprint something, and all of a sudden it's like the internet just takes your words and twists them around.
Uh-huh.
And so this is really exciting for me because I really appreciated the film and I really loved
That
it.
makes me happy.
And so I wanted to kind of pick your brain about where it all came from and what your thoughts about these larger themes are.
Yeah.
But when I watched it, my first thought was, Elliot, you've been a very bad boy. Why in this political climate, when queer people are dealing with so many hardships and we're seeing the return of these old talking points, like calling us groomers, like it's the 1950s or the 1960s, what possessed you in this moment to create a film about a gay man and a pederast, and not only put them in a house together, but have them find a shared humanity?
It's kind of none of my business. Like that right-wing rhetoric is like not something I would ever want to make anything informed by. And so like what those people think is none of my business. It's like I would never want any of my favorite filmmakers to make the films that I'm watching with some skewed, like misinformed, dumb rhetoric that they're dancing around. Like that would be sad for me, and I probably wouldn't think of
Yeah, and I
them
think
as my
that
favorite filmmakers.
that's why I responded to it, because you're having an inner community discussion. And so it feels like this is made for an audience where it kind of doesn't matter what the other people think. And it does follow this grand tradition of films and queer films that pick up on these themes. Like I was thinking about Mysterious Skin and Happiness when I watched it. And those films were made sort of in this other media landscape that was a little bit more hermetically sealed in a way, where it was, indie movie goers, and films like these can just like burst right into the national discourse. And that's why they feel a little dangerous, because it's like, oh Lord, why are we having these discussions when they should probably be a little bit more closed? But that's also what made it feel exciting. And I really appreciated how there was sort of a lack of judgment. And right now we're in a time where we're throwing the word pedophile around so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like in Kendrick and Drake rap beefs, and people are screaming it out in a stadium, or we have the Epstein files, or Michael Jackson's allegations are back in the news. And we've sort of removed the humanity from that topic, and we don't even have a good definition for it, but so many people are using it. But Hank in the movie is such a human character. It's such a beautiful examination of him and all of his questions. So much of the movie revolves around him questioning why he's made the way he is. Where did you find the moral compass to deal with him as a character?
This film was not constructed to be like necessarily a social message. Like I really kind of hate when I see a filmmaker talking about their film and the first thing they say is like, we want to destigmatize. Like I think that's so lame.
Why?
I just, because that's not like, yeah, sure, film can be like a political tool, but that's not necessarily how I engage with it. There's like lots of great political films that do it very explicitly. Like Costa Gavras's work I think is beautiful. Like it's definitely its own canon, and yes, there's like a broader discussion about, is every film political? I feel like when a filmmaker says that to me, like I'm out, kind of.
Okay.
Like I don't know, like it, for some reason it always sounds a little bit condescending. The character of Hank, I tried my best to write it in a way where, like, if you were writing these two characters and you're doing enough of your like diligent research, when writing you're trying to inhabit those characters as believably as you possibly can. They need to, even on the page when an actor reads the script, they need to say things that make sense. They need to move through a space that makes sense. Like it all needs to come from a personal history of the character. And so even just doing that, even that, I think attention is empathetic or is humanizing. Your job is to believably create a real person out of nothing. I think that to me is how I tackled the character. It was, if I am doing all of the research that I can and trying to write it as honestly as possible, and like how I believe this character would reasonably move and speak and the things that they would say and the history that he has, then that is like as truthful as you could attempt to be. I think I realized pretty quickly that writing this, Hank could never be representative of like all pedophiles.
That would have been truly bad.
Well, that, yeah. And then it's like, and Aaron could never be representative of like all gay guys or all sex workers. Like, I had to throw that notion out pretty quickly. Like, you can't. It would be impossible.
Right, and they don't function as archetypes, which I think in a chamber piece would be a common way to go about it, but they function very much as parts of who themselves are. When you say that you did research for Hank, what kind of research did you do?
I mean, there's a lot of listening to personal testimony. There's this great documentary, Pervert Park, that I relied on a lot, which is about a group of sex offenders who recently are released from prison. They all live in a trailer park together that's like enough outside the bounds of a school that they can all like legally live there. It makes that part easy for them. And then they're living in this community where they can all like hold each other accountable, and they take like weekly therapy sessions, and you get to hear all of their kind of personal stories. And then lots of YouTube videos. There are many, especially out of Europe, like short docs with faceless people who say like, yes, I'm a pedophile. I know I'm attracted to children. I've never acted on it. I plan to never act on it. But like, this is what a day in the life of like my mind is like, or something. Like, there's plenty of resources out there that are strictly like personal testimony that, sure, it's anecdotal, but it's kind of difficult to source research on the subject that's conclusive in any way, because I mean, research requires funding, and not many people are funding that kind of research.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of it was personal testimony.
And what about Alex's character? What was the research for that, or were you pulling from your own experience as a gay?
A lot of the Aaron character feels very personal to me. Like, it's about, I think that there's a real like generational difference with the way that Zillennials experience like sex and love versus an older group of gay men. The way that my generation experiences sex and dating is kind of like internet fed, and it's almost like hobbyist. And I think that there's something for older people in general, maybe not even queer, that love is a fated thing. All of your life is leading towards it. To me, there seems to be like a difference in the characters of even Hank and Aaron with like how they think about love and sex. But my experience as a gay man, especially like, I lived in LA for 8 years, and it was very isolating and fractured scene. I mean, yes, there's lots of things to do if you're a gay guy in LA, and there's many gay people in LA, but at the same time, it feels very hobby-ish. Like, I guess that's how I could describe it. And something about it felt very lonely. Isn't even the right word, because I didn't feel lonely. Like, I had a good amount of gay friends there, still do, and straight friends too, and plenty of situationships or hookups or whatever. But something about it was so like disconnected and weird. And
I think that's interesting, because when I watched that character, it felt timeless to me, that isolation and also the tension that exists between what you have to pretend you are in order to exist as a gay man and to exist within the sort of the guidelines and the rules that we have for each other. And then there's the tension between that and the performance of having to perform masculinity and having to perform sensuality. To me, it felt very timeless, because it could have been, other than the technology, it really could have been a 1970s Times Square hustler or a 1990s VHS model boy, or it could have been early Rent Boy 2010s or now. And those things seemed so timeless and universal. And when I first started the movie, not knowing anything about it, I was kind of like, when he's doing his performance in the beginning, and it's so cringy because it's so like, oh no. And I didn't know what I was getting into. So I thought, I was like, I don't have another one of these. I watched so many of these movies in the late 90s, early 2000s of this, like the hustler story. And I'm like, let me guess, he's going to get beat with a pipe at the end of the film, or like he's going to find love, or it's going to be one of those, binaries. But then as the film progresses, you realize that it's kind of supposed to be cringy and it's supposed to be fake because that's not really who he is.
Well, and also so much of sex and love in the world of gay men, it's like it's really related to how you think of yourself.
Right.
There's this like thing on Twitter where people would be like, are they boyfriends or brothers? Because like gays will look so similar to the guys that they're dating.
Yeah.
But it's like you probably seek out the things that are attractive to you, and that's also how you model yourself. Yeah, so the film is like definitely much more about how you can explain yourself to like yourself at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think part of what makes it so intense is that as it progresses and you kind of see him shed those layers, and at some point the scene where he literally sheds all of his hair, and you get to see like the boy in there. I mean, the performance is fantastic, and the way that you hold the camera on his face in certain shots where you can see it. That's when I thought, oh, I didn't sign up for the film that I thought I signed up for, which is fantastic, because I was sort of kind of like rolling my eyes on that first scene. And I also thought, I'm like, oh, so many queens are loving it and they're getting so turned on by it, and they're probably thinking it's like a very sexy ride. But then you sort of see that this huge twist happens where he finds out whose house he's in all of a sudden, and he has to shed all of that. And what he sort of sees as his salvation in the beginning, which is discovering that he's this dumb top who just wants to like beat the shit out of people and then fuck them, and then that's like, it's supposed to be his big revelation. And then the movie sort of strips that layer off of him, and it's really, there's scenes in the film that are so difficult to sit through. And I was lucky because I watched it alone, so I did have a couple of moments where I thought like, oh my god, the queens are gonna be so mad at this because it's gonna hit so close to home and it's gonna be so confusing. And I thought like, oh, he's gonna go for, like, meaning you, I thought, well, he's going for it. Like, it's happening. And it was about at the halfway point of the movie, and I thought, oh, this is saying some very interesting things. And I think, I mean, the best art is a mirror. So it's like, how do you feel about it? What is your own relationship to these figures in our lives, especially as gay men, who we do have so many brushes with characters like Hank, especially if we're lonely and if we're vulnerable. It can be ripe situations for a predator to swoop in, right? And so seeing how you were stripping away that character's machismo and that facade, and then you saw how at some point in their lives they had this very strange interaction. I thought that was fascinating, and I thought you did a fantastic job of that.
Thank you.
So I might get a lot of shit for this one, but the sex scenes reminded me of Heated Rivalry.
Okay.
Because of how they're actually both so choreographed. The way that they're interacting with each other in this sexual way, and the tiny little minutia and the tiny little movements that they're doing are revealing so much of the characters and their needs. And I was really curious as to how you choreograph those sex scenes. And I think they were so effective in the way that Heated Rivalry was effective. They're totally different. So if anybody is expecting anything like that, it's not. But how were you able to choreograph those, and how much of the characters have their needs that they think they have, right? And then their needs that they actually have, and then the needs that they remember having at some point. And all of those show up in the choreography of the sex. So how did you create those sex scenes?
Blocking them was its own challenge because every scene needs to have a purpose. There needs to be revealed with the sex scene, because it's not hot. Like, that's not the point. The point is something else. The point is like moving the character kind of through their arc. And one thing that I was thinking about a lot when I was writing them was like how sex feels so, I feel like, conceptual in so many things. I feel like on screen there's no like real danger to sex anymore. Like, I think the way that so many of us have sex is it's laced with like danger or like opportunity or excitement or love. Like, it's a very significant thing that we do that like moves our story forward. And so I feel like sometimes you'll see lots of sex scenes in movies that either exist as like a cut scene in order to just provide some like stimuli or something. Or I can think of so many sex scenes, I feel like, where you see two characters on a date out to dinner, and they like, then the moment gets really quiet and they look at each other, and then it'll be like hard cut to like really hard sex, and it's meant to like,
they're getting pounded,
and then it's like, and then it'll cut to like the actual story continuing afterwards. Like those scenes are like cut scenes meant to almost just like break up the rhythm of the narrative, or just like exist as like a carnival rider. They like exist to just like make you be like, but like that's not how any of us experience sex. Like sex, yeah, it moves our story forward. Like it always means something to us, I think, when we do it, regardless if that's like true love or not. Like that's not really what I'm saying. But and so it was important to me to take the act of sex and like take it away from this conceptual space that I feel like it lives in.
And I think one of the things that you did, I think, very well was how even within the act of two people having sex, it can mean completely different things for the other person.
Yeah.
And then if you do it the right way, sometimes you can meet in the middle and sort of trade off and see the other person's narrative through you and your narrative through them.
Yeah.
And so the sex scenes in the film are sort of like these narratives that are old and that are new and that are super confusing and disorienting. Then they sort of reveal themselves. I mean, one of the most disturbing moments in the film is when daddy shaves the son, I guess. I guess that's the archetype. So he shaves him to remind him of what he looked like when he was younger. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I write a lot about is how gay men are very good at creating these narratives about who they are in the sexual moment. But sometimes we can bite off more than we can chew. And so Alex has sort of believed himself to be this infallible, macho dom guy, right? And that's his whole sort of life revolves around that narrative of himself. His livelihood depends on it as well. And then he's confronted with this super vulnerable, disorienting, disturbing moment where he realizes he may have bit off more than he can chew, and he has that collapse followed by a moment of violence. What was sort of the impetus to create that moment for him? Because it's really, and he does, I mean, that performance is so wonderful because you hold the camera right on his face and he's like, stop it. And I was just like, like, oh God, this is like a horror movie. I was like, stop it.
Yeah.
What was the impetus to create that scene, or what was the inspiration behind that?
It really felt like it operated in this way that it like split the film in half. Like it almost created...
It's a fissure within the film. It's like it fractures the entire thing.
It makes it kind of so that neither of them can go back. In the shaving scene has like really been turned into a different person. And then that like loss of his what he thinks of as his identity is like so startling. And the first half is like leading up to that, and the second half is like, okay, what did that mean?
I think in a way too, it's like there's an echo because it's almost like a loss of his innocence that probably would have happened if they had sex when he was 12. So that's the danger of that kind of sexual interaction, that it really costs the other person something, right?
Yeah. Well, it's also reminding him of all the things that he doesn't like about himself. Like he's moved so hard to move towards the Aaron Eagle character that like this thing that fulfills Hank is like taking away from Aaron. I feel like that's how I thought about kind of every sex scene. It's like one of them is giving and one of them is taking, and
yeah,
like in less like sexual terms.
Yeah, in my notes I had each sex scene it's one for the other, and they can't seem to meet in the middle. And
but that's
like,
a lot. I mean, that's a lot of how the script is like moves. Like a lot of the engine of the movie is kind of sustained by the dissonance between like their real self versus like their assumed self. Like how, and that's like kind of what I feel like the entire movie is pushed along by. And
it's so lonely. It's such a lonely existence for both of them, because even within the sort of commiseration or the conspiracy that they're both creating within that house, and I mean it feels like a play. It felt like such a play. I think it would be such a wonderful play, and it's been, it's a chamber piece. And the way that they can both share something that's so disturbingly intimate with one another, and then still have these moments of just complete isolation and loneliness, which it should have felt more hopeless than it did at the end. But I didn't consider it a hopeless film.
No, I don't think it is at all.
I don't think it is
like,
either.
Optimistic.
Yeah, I thought it was very optimistic. And actually, when I started watching it, and as I as we got more into it, and I was like, oh, this Elliot's onto something. Hold on, let me pay attention. I thought if he spoiler, but if you're watching this already, you've already seen the film. I thought if he kills either of them, this is going to be such a failure. And I'm going to be so angry. And I'm going to be all clackety clack 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 on the internet. And it ends in such a way that you're as kind to them as you could possibly be. Throughout so much of film history with the production code and audience expectation, like those characters throughout most of the existence of film were either supposed to die or they're supposed to be punished in just unspeakable ways. Like the production code would have required both of them. You know, in the 1930s, they would have required both of them to get killed. One of the things that I really appreciated, how you don't have to bring up a punishment for them, or you don't have to punish them because the burden of what they're carrying already feels like punishment enough. Mm-hmm. And so all that you can sort of hope for them is that they release a little bit of that burden by the end of the film that allows them to maybe walk a little bit more straight. And so when the film ended the way it did with him just like humming in the shower, it was such like, okay. I'm like, all right, this is as good as we're gonna get.
Yeah, it's so funny.
Did he still get the $50K though? Yeah.
I feel like people have said to me multiple times, like, I was expecting one of them to kill the other one, and I'm always like taken aback when people say that. I'm always like, you did?
Well, I mean,
I hope the film feels in a way like a thriller.
I think that's part of
but
our own generational trauma, because I grew up where you kind of had to, and if movies wanted to get made, even in the 90s and 2000s, like that needed to happen. Like you couldn't just have a pedophile and like a sex worker both hanging out, and one of them wasn't going to get beat with a pipe or overdose or get arrested. Like the punishment always has have to be there in queer media, which is also, I think, a function of like the generational differences. So when people tell you like, oh, I was expecting one of them to kill the other one, it's like, it's because that's the only way that we've known films like that to exist.
Like a punishment would have been, yeah, like me as a filmmaker making a moral judgment on the characters, which is like part of me is like queer characters, I think, can die in movies. Like I think it's like what story you're telling. I don't know. I'm not not on principle wasn't going to have either of them die, but it's like this story is, I feel like when I was writing it, like you know when to end it, because you should have like a very clear moment when that character's arc is complete. And to me, Aaron's arc was Aaron Eagle to Alex, and like him humming in the shower the song that is referenced throughout the film was like, okay, great, and now he's Alex. Like that's, I mean, the arc is like a little bit more complicated than just Aaron to Alex, but like that's when I knew to end the film. And to me, like that is an optimistic ending, and that felt like the story I wanted to tell out of this encounter between the two of them.
Yeah, and also in a lot of media like this too, the sex worker has always had to, they either have to die or they have to like leave the streets. Like, and there's none of that part of it, which I really appreciated.
Like too. He's not getting out of the business or
yeah, it's like I'm getting out of the life now. And yeah, it just,
that would be, yeah.
One of the other shots that stuck out to me was when they've had this like insane night, and then you cut to the 12-year-old boy on the street, and then there's this moment where I thought, oh God, they're doing a flashback of the boy that Hank tried to assault, which I'm assuming was on purpose.
Yeah, it's like a little fake out. And I also really wanted to do this. I kind of wanted to like replicate the smash cut from Bergman's Wild Strawberries, where it's like that film is very much about like this tortured older man. And there's this like perfect frame where he's like asleep with his head is like just tilted just so, and there's like a hard cut from that to like something that they're at least like referencing before that makes it feel like thematically cool. And I thought that would be like a fun thing to do with that scene. And so it's supposed to like hard cut from the position of his face to the size of this boy's face in the next frame. But it's meant, yeah, it's like kind of a fake out, but it's also,
I thought it was earned, because when I saw that cut, I was like, oh, I hope they're not going to do a flashback to this, like to the
No, but I mean,
bathroom and the school and
yeah, no, it wasn't just like, I mean, it wasn't just a fake out for its own sake. It's like innocents walking down the street. It's like a reminder of kind of what they've been talking around this whole time.
yeah.
And yeah, you wonder if it's a flashback, but then you see like Aaron watching his kind of innocence pass him by.
Yeah. It's also important to remember the darkness behind the issue of pedophilia and pederasts, right? Like you have to remember that these aren't so often queer people of color, they're made older than they are in so many ways, right? And so this is a common thing in older queer media when you read stories of like hustlers and stuff in the 70s, and then they're like, I was just 14, and you don't really put it together how young that is. Yeah. And so when I thought it was a very earned, I didn't consider it a fake out. I considered it sort of like a reminder that in a way too, as a filmmaker, you're sort of like, there's just remind you, this could get a lot worse. Like I could have shown you. Yeah. And also the idea that you've just sort of revealed that the story that Hank tells in the beginning, how they keep switching their little stories around a little bit, and how he switches the story around saying that the boy got away, that you know, he changed his mind. Yeah. And then in the end, he confesses that he didn't. The boy actually got away. So he would have fulfilled that predatorial need had he been given an opportunity. And in a way, that's his punishment, that confession and that confrontation with himself in that space, that maybe something he never even told anybody before.
Yeah, I think when I watched the film or when I was writing it, I think of that as like he's never said that out loud. And it's like important that he's half asleep when he's saying it. Like I don't think he could bring himself to kind of admit his own truth.
And that's when sort of the darkness, and then of course there's scene where he like wipes it on his lips. It's so complex and it's got so many threads running through it. But that confession, I think, is also a fracture in the film too. Like I feel like that's the end of it for me, where it's like, no, this is so complex and this is so dangerous. And I think the danger and the sadness and the loneliness of it. And so you do get to have this beautiful daytime moment with the innocence of it, and reminding the audience, you know, don't get too sympathetic here. We're talking about the death of things that are very important.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about the interstitials too.
I am curious to know what the vibe on the set is when something is that heavy. What was the lightest, funnest moment on set, and what was the darkest, like everybody's super quiet, and then when the scene finishes, everybody's like, oof.
This is maybe kind of like a stupid answer, but like most days on set were nice. Like, I mean, yes, it was heavy, but then when we're done rolling, then we'd like get a snack and vape and hang out.
How long was the shooting for?
I can't remember if it was 11 or 12 days.
Okay.
But one of the days was like we had a half day at the end, which we had filmed that kind of entire climactic Mad Lib scene. And then that night there was like a freak hard drive error and we lost all the footage.
No.
And so that was our last day of filming. So we like had our wrap party and then told Reed and Kieran, like, you actually got to come back tomorrow. We lost everything.
Wait, that sounds like a nightmare.
It was a nightmare.
What were the scenes that were on there?
It was their...
I just got itchy just thinking about it.
It was their...
That's awful.
It was just the Mad Lib scene. Like, it was that very emotional, like, heavy... beat, and so they had to come back
where he's like sitting down and they're doing the Mad Lib. He looks I mean, I do love
it was like pretty much that whole scene.
Oh my God. What do you feel now that you can confess it to me now? Was the first version better than what you got at the end, or was it better the second time?
No, I don't even think either of them are better or worse. Like they were just a little bit different.
Yeah. And I sometimes when those things happen, like on set or if I'm working on a project and like something like that happens, I have to really just get it in my mind that there's a reason it happened, and
I don't think like that.
Better. I have to, otherwise my obsessiveness, pissed. I'll just be so angry, and so you have to have a wrap on there. It's like, sorry guys.
No, I was mad.
That is terrifying. What was the other like challenging thing technically that you had to deal with, or that you thought was going to be unsurmountable?
I mean, we really made this film for like very, very little money. Production budget was like around $50K.
It looks much more expensive than that.
Thank you. Shout out to also our DP, Ryan Jackson Healy, who's great. But
it's very film noir. It's giving you like all of the things.
I really wanted to like not be afraid to attempt like the visual world. Like I feel like I watch a lot of indie films. I feel like especially in the last like 10 years, you are watching a lot of these indies or maybe by first-time filmmakers like myself when I made Blue Film, but the films feel really kind of afraid to try something visually, or they mistake like framing for maybe like what cinematography is. I don't know, but it's like I was really so intent on like the film needs to be attempting something visually with color, with movement. I mean, and also it's a budgetary restraint too. Like sometimes when you're dealing with such a small amount of filming time and you have to make sure that at least all of the performances are there, and so a lot of times you're getting your standard coverage and then you're like, we have to move on, and like we didn't get any like special whatever. But it's like finding ways to, I tried to find a lot of ways to like motivate the image, or like there's so many different formats used. I wanted it to feel like something instead of like a flat I don't know.
The first part of the film feels like it could be plucked out of a different film, like you know, with the mask and the webcam stuff. Like it could be like a sexy thriller, you know, like.
Yeah.
How early on did you make the choice to like take such a pivot, where if you went in there blind and you started to see it and you like are watching him open the door with like the ski mask, and you could tell this is going to go south, and maybe the hustler is going to kill the guy, and then he's going to have to figure out where to put the body, and like we've seen that so many times, and some of it's effective and some of it's just like, oh god.
Well, I liked the idea of a genre as like a Trojan horse.
Did you know that early on?
Like, yeah, I mean the script was always written in that way, even from
Okay.
the first draft. Is like I wanted to introduce these like thriller,
Because it's also
elements
marketed
or
that way when
something
you see what you're allowed to show, at least on social media, is sort of
Yeah.
like you see that and you think, oh, I wonder what that.
I like the idea of using genre as like a kind of Trojan horse or something, like making the film something completely different than it seems or begins as. Like that was also something I wanted to do. And so, yeah, I also loved this idea of a hard cut from like the Aaron Camboy filmed on like the MacBook to like a man in a balaclava. Like that felt like a compelling
It's very like
hook to
David
me
Fincher,
in like two
yeah.
images. And so, yeah, it was always a part of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's super effective, and I think once I realized, that's when I started to settle into my seat, where it's not that. And I don't have to be tense in that way. Now I have to think about all sorts of other things that are complicated,
Yeah.
which is a different kind of tension. But it was taking my attention. So, I mean, it was one of those things just like, oh, I get to like put my phone away and see what these two characters have to say about God, which is another thing that I didn't expect it, which is these really incredible conversations that it has about us asking God why he or she or they made us the way that we are, and if our desires are part of how we were made. Does following our desires make us closer or farther to that divinity? And I wasn't expecting sort of the really existential religious questions, and the sadness of the mirrored history of that, because gay men had to ask themselves that for 1,000 years before we sort of had gay liberation. And it was always, we were told, you are an abomination and you don't deserve to live. And those two experiences mirrored each other, and that's a really difficult thing to sit with, right? Because for so long we spend trying not to be lumped in with sexual deviancy or disorders, and yet we're all sort of made the way that we're made. And to have two characters sit there and sort of discuss that, and Hank does that performance is so kind in general, and I've seen him he plays, I think, a congressman in House of Cards, and he's so good in it because the earnestness just like seeps through him, where like he can do no wrong, and then you put him in this like role of a pedophile who assaulted a child, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be such a complicated like.
Well, that's what is like. So Reed is so like, I'm so proud of his performance in this film, because even when he showed up on set, it was like he was immediately doing this weirder thing where he was playing the character almost as like so pooky. I don't know like if that's the right word, like so like cutesy and
it's like a teacher cute. Yeah, it's like how
and
a teachers
it
are.
immediately like makes him kind of more human and also more eerie. It's like even like further drives a wedge in like kind of how you think about the character, which I thought was so interesting when I saw Reed doing that. There's even a way he's sitting in a chair, which I can't even replicate it.
Yeah.
But it's like,
or eating the pizza with the
his
fork.
yeah.
And then you have that, and then he sheds that too when he's like, oh, I like the doughy eyes. When in the sex scene, he says something like, I like those big wide
eyes.
That's when I was like, oh, this is so creepy. Because then you see the sort of the predatorial nature of who he is kind of come out. And also just his like sexual needs. Like that's what he likes. And that's what all of that's been leading to that. And then Kieran is so ready to sort of give him that in that moment because that is his job and that is who he believes himself to be in the service of others. But then that scene just totally takes, I mean, it goes off a cliff in this way that was, I mean, my heart was pounding through my chest when he's like, stop it. Both of them have, everything's shed, and it's a little horrifying. And you also think of I really appreciate media that makes you think of your own desires that you don't want to think about, or how we all carry these things with each other. And
have you had any friends watch it?
Yeah, I've had a couple of friends watch it.
What are their takes?
It's really polarized.
You can be honest.
I will be honest. The people that I talked, they either hate it or they loved it.
Sure.
Yeah. I haven't had, because it's only been in the theaters, which I'm really excited for people to sort of watch it now that it's going to be streaming. And that's why I think it's a hard sell to be like, let me like spend an afternoon with the pedophile movie by myself. Right. You know, like it's a really difficult one. But I think watching it at home.
It's also like, I mean, I'm very excited for a lot more people to be able to watch it. Yeah. We've had such a limited release, but there is something about watching it in a theater which is like really interesting. Usually there's a couple walkouts and then everyone's kind of locked in and it's like very quiet and it's very... in full disclosure, I got sent the screener early because I wasn't where it was playing. Yeah. And they're like, we really would like you to watch. I'm like, all right, send it over. And I was so busy and I'm like, all right, let me give this thing a minute. And then when I sort of read a little bit more of the synopsis, I'm glad that I saw that by myself because I needed a few seconds to and I get the giggles when I get nervous. And there was just like a couple of moments that I just couldn't stop laughing because I was like, oh my God. And then when I realized what kind of film it wasn't going to be the film that a lot of people are going to think it's going to be. Also, it's really about your own relationship with your own desires and your own relationship if you've experienced sexual abuse or if you have pedophiles in your family. Those kinds of things are all going to really change the way that people view the film and view the character arcs and view whether or not, frankly, if people feel these characters are punished enough at the end, which is, we can't help but view media like this through our own moral lens. Yeah, for sure.
I tend to not moralize about that stuff because in my work, I don't do that as a rule. So that's why I thought it was such a tightrope act that you didn't do that. And I think that for some people, it's going to really make them angry. And the friends that I had that there was 2 complaints about it. I don't know if they would be complaints, but it was like, I saw films like these in the early 2000s, which to me was like, I'm like, it's a compliment. Like, is this a part of a lineage? And then the other ones were, why do a film like this now? You know, like, why now?
Oh, I love to your friends, but I hate that talking point because it's like films are not like material. They don't just exist to be like picked off a shelf being like, this is the perfect time to release
You know what? Now's the pedophile time.
No, it's like they're personal expressions over long periods of time that you make. And then when they're ready, you put them out. Like they're cultivated over a long time and they're personal,
which is why to me I'm like, you guys you're missing the point of it a little bit to me, which is why I'm like sitting on this chair, you know, because I'm like, I thought this was cool because it's not supposed to be a discussion with everybody. I don't like it when queer people have to have discussions with each other thinking about what straight people are going to think about it. And I don't like to think like, that's why I don't like the term like unapologetic. Like it's like, who are you apologizing for? Or sex positivity, like that, you know, that signifies that you think there's something negative about it and you're worried about everybody else. Like, I don't like that. That's why I thought, I'm like, this is great because how subversive in its own way to be like, I don't give a fuck if there's a crazy MAGA alt-right faction that's calling us groomers and is starting to lump us back with pedophiles, and that's
which
the
is
long
also
tradition.
Like that talk is kind of so nebulous to the film. Like no, like I mean, as of right now, Blue Film has not like broken into MAGA Twitter. Like, and I kind of
knock on wood.
I mean, I kind of don't think
it's terrifying.
I kind of don't. Yeah, knock on wood. But
wait, is that something you'd want?
No, well, I mean, like I wouldn't be opposed to it, I guess. Like, everyone watched the movie.
Have you ever gone viral on Twitter? It's horrifying. It's the worst people in the world over there.
Sure, I wouldn't. I don't have a Twitter. I'm very like.
I have to do it for work, and that's not a place you want to have a nuanced conversation about anything.
Sure. I mean, if the MAGA people got a hold of Blue Film, I don't think I would feel any specific way about it.
Okay,
But
that's good.
I've been surprised at how easy it's been for me to
It's that limited release, diva.
like just right. The limited release, I'm sure, is its own thing. But I mean, like, I have found myself whenever anyone's seen the film and is very, very either angry about it or something.
Mm-hmm.
I found it pretty easy to like separate my personal feelings of making the film.
Good.
Which I've kind of been surprised by. Usually I don't work that way. Usually I'm very like emotional.
Well, that's the thing. When you create something that speaks for itself, you don't have to deal with the conversations always. And that's that's how I know when I've made something that I'm like, oh, I'm sorry if it makes you angry. Like, I said what I said, and either you got it or you don't, or you have to take me into context with it. Speaking of context, the historical context of these conversations was interesting because I was thinking about the conversations that gay people had to have with NAMBLA in the late 70s. That's the North American Man-Boy Love Association. And
which
how
Allen Ginsberg is a founding member of.
And so is Harry Hay.
Which I learned. But it was interesting. I was reading that Ginsberg was a founding member not because he necessarily was advocating for pedophilia, but because he felt some obviously misguided, like, it was for like some American belief in like freedom of expression.
Well, it's also because in the beginning when Pride there was no gatekeeping around who could be in a parade or like who could consider, who could be part of the queer liberation movement. And there was a lot of inter-community debates about whether or not that was appropriate to have. And ultimately, obviously, they decided no. And that was probably the correct choice. But what was also interesting to me is that how it's so era specific. So if you had 14-year-old runaways that were much more common at the time because it wasn't accepted to be gay, then you also would have a lot of pederasts who could come in and fulfill the void that was left by so many runaways and kids getting kicked out of their homes and stuff. So that's why that's another part of our history and those discussions and those conversations, and it opens up a can of worms for that. And that's why I was like, this is kind of a dangerous thing to talk about online, because it forces you to look at those really difficult chapters in gay liberation history. And there would have been a lot of men having the exact same kind of conversations that the two characters in your film would have had about ancient Rome and about mentorship and about those things. And that's what my mind kept sort of going back to that when I was watching that. And I thought, oh, this is like a very difficult. That was the part that I was even nervous to bring up in this interview today, because it's like, how will that be taken out of context, or, will that get plucked out for a clip?
I mean, I pretty much only see people engaging with the movie in good faith, which is like what I wanted. It's rewarding, I think, if you do that. Again, I think I was maybe bracing myself a little bit more for some kind of backlash to the film.
In your like worst case scenario, like in Darkest Night of the Soul, like, what did I do? Did you ever have that moment? And if you did, what was the worst case scenario in your mind?
I never had that moment.
Oh, that's
honestly.
good.
Maybe that's naive, but I never had that moment.
Good.
But I think I really just believed like in the film, and I believed in the quality of work that like my actors and my whole crew gave to the movie, and I believe in like the merit of the film. And so yeah, never really had one.
That's good.
But I mean, I would also, again, this is like, I have so many favorite filmmakers that I would hate to think that they were like tortured about putting out a film that was like, yeah, maybe a little problematic or something, but it's a great film, and I'm glad that they put it out. Like, there's just like a faith that the right people will find the movie, and I have faith in the quality and the morals of the film.
What's the best compliment you've gotten, or the best affirmation that you've gotten for it? Or the moment you're like, oof, I did it, nailed it.
I think the New York Times critics pick.
That was a good
and
one,
also
yeah.
because I love Wesley Morris and his writing. So that one was really special. But I mean, I like outside of kind of an industry validation, like it's been really fun to see it connect with people in moving ways. Like when someone tells me they're very moved by it, like especially when I've been doing Q&As and I'm around after a screening and people are talking to me, it's so fun to hear about how they received the film. And it's also very humbling and moving to me that they have this like emotional reaction to the movie.
Did you expect that when you were writing it?
Well, I mean, the goal of writing it was I wasn't like intending to create this movie that is like controversy for controversy's sake. Like I knew that the subject matter is pretty kind of lightning rod subject matter, but I mean, it was intending to create like a compelling, hopefully moving, like two-hander drama, which is like a genre in and of itself that I really admire. And I wanted to make something that was very producible, that I knew that I could make, and that I only needed 2 actors and my crew could get paid. And like, how do I accomplish all of those things with tiny budget? And so not to be controversy, not for controversy's sake, but to make a drama that I knew I could make.
Do you foresee your next films to be as much of a lightning rod topic, or does that provide a rush for you to pick a topic that's like a lightning rod, or will the next one be like a family drama set in like, I don't know.
There's like so much I want to do, and there's so many other stories that I would like to tell, and they're all pretty varying. Like not necessarily, I guess, to answer your question. There's many kinds of films that I love. It all depends on the story and like what I would want to tell.
Do you have the stories that you'd want to tell next yet? Do you have like a bunch of ideas, or do you work like one at a time?
I have a few scripts that I'd love to get made that I wrote this like 3 years ago and filmed it 2 years ago. And so that's been a lot of time to like put the keys to final draft.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I have stuff that I'd like to make.
Would you want like a much bigger budget, or just you'd like to move your way up a little bit slowly?
Well, I definitely like a bigger budget than $50K. But
yeah,
I mean, it's still
that's fantastic.
It depends on
fantastic for $50K.
It depends on the story, and if like when there's a will, there's a way, and it's possible. So. But I would like to make it for more than $50K.
Let's give her $1 million, please. Let's get you $1 million.